In the vast darkness of space, something is speaking to us. Something that shouldn't exist, shouldn't be there, and according to everything we know about physics and astronomy, shouldn't be capable of what it's doing right now. On March 29th, 2019, an amateur astronomer named Gennady Borisov was scanning the night sky from his backyard observatory in Crimea when he spotted something unusual, a faint smudge of light moving against the background stars. At first glance, it looked like any other comet, the kind of celestial wanderer that graces our solar system dozens of times each year. But this wasn't just any comet. This was something far more extraordinary, far more mysterious, and as we're now discovering, far more troubling than anyone could have imagined. The object was designated 3I/ATLAS, and it quickly became apparent that this visitor was not from our neighbourhood. In fact, it wasn't from anywhere near our neighbourhood. This comet had travelled across the vast emptiness between star systems, a journey that would take millions upon millions of years, carrying with it secrets from the depths of interstellar space. But here's where our story takes a turn into the realm of the impossible. Because 3I/ATLAS isn't just passing through our solar system like a silent ghost from another world. It's talking. It's sending signals. Complex, structured, undeniably artificial signals that have left the world's top scientists scratching their heads and questioning everything they thought they knew about comets, about space, and about whether we might not be as alone in this universe as we once believed. When Dr. Sarah Chen first detected the anomalous readings from 3I/ATLAS at the Arecibo Observatory, she thought her equipment was malfunctioning. The signals were too organised, too purposeful, too intelligent to be coming from a chunk of ice and rock hurtling through space. She ran diagnostics on her instruments 3 times before accepting the impossible truth staring back at her from the data screens. The signals weren't random. They weren't the kind of natural electromagnetic emissions you'd expect from a comet interacting with solar wind or cosmic radiation. These were patterns, sequences, mathematical progressions that seemed to follow a logic that was both alien and oddly familiar. Prime numbers appeared in the data. Fibonacci sequences emerged from the electromagnetic noise, and buried within the complexity of these transmissions was something even more disturbing, something that made Dr. Chen's hands shake as she printed out the analysis results. The signals were getting stronger as 3I/ATLAS moved deeper into our solar system, and they were changing, evolving, adapting in real time as if whatever was generating them was learning about us, studying us, preparing for something that no one on Earth was ready to comprehend. The mainstream media hasn't caught wind of this story yet. The scientific community has been keeping it under wraps, partly because they can't explain what they're seeing, and partly because they're terrified of the implications. How do you tell the world that an interstellar visitor might be trying to communicate with us? How do you explain that this communication appears to be coming from an object that, by all rights, should be nothing more than frozen water and ancient dust? But the truth has a way of surfacing, especially when that truth is as monumentally significant as what we're dealing with here. In the past 6 months, a small group of astronomers, physicists and signal analysts have been working around the clock to decode what 3I/ATLAS is trying to tell us. Their findings, which have been shared in hushed conversations at scientific conferences and through encrypted communications between observatories, paint a picture that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about life, intelligence, and our place in the cosmic order. The signals aren't just random transmissions, they're responses. When radio telescopes around the world accidentally pointed in the direction of 3I/ATLAS while conducting routine observations, the comet's signals changed. When NASA sent a routine data burst to one of its deep space probes, 3I/ATLAS responded with a transmission that mirrored the same frequency and modulation patterns. It's as if something within or attached to this interstellar wanderer is actively monitoring our communications and attempting to establish contact using our own technological language. Dr. Marcus Webb, a cryptographer who was brought in to analyse the signal patterns, described his first encounter with the 3I/ATLAS data as the most humbling and terrifying experience of his professional career. The mathematical complexity embedded within these transmissions suggests an intelligence that operates on a level far beyond human comprehension. Yet the underlying structure shows an almost childlike eagerness to communicate, to reach out across the vast emptiness of space and make contact with another thinking species. What makes this situation even more extraordinary is the nature of 3I/ATLAS itself. Interstellar comets are incredibly rare visitors to our solar system. In all of human history, we've only confirmed the existence of a handful of these cosmic travelers. They're essentially messengers from other star systems, carrying with them the chemical signatures and physical characteristics of worlds we may never visit. But 3I/ATLAS is different from every other interstellar object we've ever studied. Its trajectory is wrong. Its composition is wrong. Its behaviour as it interacts with our sun's radiation is completely unlike anything we've seen before. And now, with the discovery of these signals, we're forced to confront the possibility that 3I/ATLAS might not be a natural object at all. It might be something else entirely, something designed, something sent. The implications of this possibility are staggering. If 3I/ATLAS is indeed an artificial construct, a probe or vessel from another civilization, then we're not just witnessing first contact with an alien intelligence. We're witnessing first contact with an intelligence so advanced that it can launch objects across the vast distances between stars, engineering them to survive journeys that would span geological ages on Earth. But even more unsettling is the timing of 3I/ATLAS's arrival. This object entered our solar system during a period of unprecedented technological advancement for humanity. We've just reached the point in our development where we can detect and analyse the kind of subtle signals that 3I/ATLAS is transmitting. We've developed the mathematical frameworks necessary to recognise artificial patterns in cosmic data. We've built the computational tools required to process and interpret complex extraterrestrial communications. Is this timing a coincidence, or is 3I/ATLAS responding to something it detected about our civilization? Has it been watching us, waiting for us to reach a certain level of technological sophistication before revealing itself? These are the questions that keep the scientists studying this phenomenon awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering if humanity is prepared for the answers they might find. The story of 3I/ATLAS and its mysterious signals is still unfolding. Every day brings new data, new patterns, new pieces of a puzzle that might fundamentally change our understanding of life in the universe. But it's also a story shrouded in secrecy, uncertainty, and fear. Fear of what these signals might mean. Fear of how humanity might react to the knowledge that we're not alone. And perhaps most terrifyingly, fear of what 3I/ATLAS might want from us. As we embark on this investigation into one of the most significant and mysterious events in human history, we'll explore every aspect of the 3I/ATLAS phenomenon. We'll examine the scientific evidence, analyse the signal patterns, and confront the possibility that our universe is far more crowded, far more dangerous, and far more wonderful than we ever dared to imagine. Because somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, something is watching us. Something is trying to communicate with us. And that something has just arrived in our cosmic backyard. Chapter 1. The discovery that changed everything. Details the initial detection of 3I/ATLAS by Gennady Borisov, the early observations that revealed its interstellar origin, and the first hints that something was unusual about this object. Covers the scientific process of confirming its extrasolar nature and the growing excitement in the astronomical community before the signal discovery. At first glance, it looked like any other comet, a celestial snowball of ice and dust. But as Borisov continued to observe it over the next few days, something became increasingly clear. This object was moving far too fast, much too fast. Comets typically orbit our sun in elongated ellipses, bound by its gravity. But this object, christened 3I/ATLAS, was blazing through the solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory, an open curve that meant it wasn't orbiting the sun at all. It was just passing through, and that could only mean one thing: it came from somewhere else. From another star system entirely. The discovery sent ripples of excitement through the astronomical community. Interstellar objects, visitors from beyond our solar system, were incredibly rare. The first confirmed one, Oumuamua, had been detected just a few years earlier, in 2017. But Oumuamua was a peculiar, elongated object, and its nature remained mysterious and debated. 3I/A TLAS, on the other hand, appeared to be a more conventional comet, making it a prime target for studying the composition of other star systems. The process of confirming 3I/A TLAS's interstellar nature was a meticulous one. Borisov's initial observations were crucial, but they needed to be corroborated by other telescopes around the world. Astronomers raced to point their instruments at the object, gathering data on its position, velocity, and spectrum. The spectrum, the rainbow of light emitted by an object, is a crucial fingerprint. It reveals the chemical composition of the object, telling us what elements are present. In the case of 3I/A TLAS, the spectrum showed the presence of familiar molecules like water ice, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen cyanide, similar to comets in our own solar system. But the relative abundance of these molecules, the specific ratios in which they were present, hinted at a different origin. As more data poured in, the evidence for 3I/A TLAS's interstellar origin became overwhelming. Its trajectory was undeniably hyperbolic. Its velocity was far too high for a solar system object, and its composition, while familiar, possessed subtle differences that suggested it formed in a different environment. The scientific process is one of rigorous testing and verification. No claim, no matter how exciting, is accepted without thorough scrutiny. In the case of 3I/A TLAS, astronomers performed countless calculations, ran simulations, and compared the object's characteristics to those of known solar system objects. They considered every possible alternative explanation, from gravitational perturbations by unseen planets to observational errors. But in the end, the interstellar origin of 3I/A TLAS remained the most plausible, and indeed the only explanation that fit all the available data. The excitement in the astronomical community was palpable. Here was a rare opportunity to study a piece of another star system up close. Astronomers planned extensive observations, hoping to learn more about the object's composition, structure, and origin. They wanted to know what kind of star system it came from, how it was ejected into interstellar space, and what it could tell us about the formation and evolution of planetary systems in general. The Very Large Telescope in Chile, the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, and the Hubble Space Telescope were all brought to bear on 3I/A TLAS. Astronomers used these powerful instruments to study the object's coma, the fuzzy atmosphere of gas and dust that surrounds the nucleus of a comet. They measured the size and shape of the nucleus, the rate at which it was shedding material, and the composition of the gas and dust in the coma. The observations revealed that 3I/A TLAS was a relatively small comet, with a nucleus estimated to be only a few hundred meters in diameter. It was also found to be surprisingly active, releasing a large amount of gas and dust as it approached the sun. This activity made it easier to study, but it also raised questions about its long-term survival. Comets lose mass each time they pass near a star, and eventually they can completely disintegrate. Would 3I/A TLAS survive its journey through the solar system, or would it crumble into dust before we had a chance to learn its secrets? As astronomers continued to observe 3I/A TLAS, they began to notice some unusual features. The object's coma appeared to be asymmetric, with a brighter region on one side than the other. This asymmetry suggested that the comet's nucleus was not uniform in composition, and that different regions were releasing gas and dust at different rates. Even more intriguing was the observation that 3I/A TLAS's brightness was fluctuating in an irregular manner. Comets typically brighten as they approach the sun, as the increased solar radiation causes more ice to sublimate and release gas and dust. But 3I/A TLAS's brightness was changing in a way that couldn't be explained by this simple effect. It seemed to be undergoing bursts of activity, sudden releases of gas and dust that caused it to brighten dramatically for a short period of time. These unusual features hinted that 3I/A TLAS might be more complex than a typical comet. Perhaps it had a unique internal structure, or perhaps it was interacting with the solar wind in an unusual way. Whatever the explanation, it was clear that this interstellar visitor had more to offer than just a glimpse into another star system. Before long, some scientists were starting to suggest that something very strange was going on. The bursts of activity, the asymmetrical coma, these were not typical behaviours for comets. Could there be something else at play here? Could this object be something other than just a simple ball of ice and dust? The growing excitement was overshadowed by a growing sense of unease. The data just didn't quite fit. And then the unthinkable happened. Dr. Sarah Chen, a radio astronomer at the Allen Telescope Array, detected something that would change everything. Dr. Chen had been monitoring 3I/ATLAS using the array's powerful radio telescopes, searching for faint radio emissions that might reveal more about the object's composition and activity. Most comets don't emit strong radio signals, but Dr. Chen was hoping to detect faint emissions from molecules like water and ammonia. Instead, she found something far more extraordinary. A series of highly structured radio signals, unlike anything she had ever seen before. Signals that appeared to be artificial. Signals that appeared to be intelligent. The initial reaction was disbelief. It had to be a mistake. A glitch in the equipment. Interference from a satellite. Anything but what it seemed to be.
Dr. Chen spent days checking and rechecking her data, running diagnostics on the telescopes and consulting with her colleagues. But the signals persisted. They were real. And they were coming from 3I Atlas. The discovery of the signals sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The implications were staggering. If the signals were indeed artificial, it would mean that we were not alone in the universe. It would mean that another civilization had developed the technology to communicate across interstellar distances. It would mean that everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos was about to change. But before anyone could jump to conclusions, it was essential to verify the signals and rule out any possible natural explanations. A team of experts was assembled, including radio astronomers, signal processing specialists, and cryptographers. They analysed the signals in detail, looking for patterns, structures, and characteristics that would distinguish them from natural radio emissions. The analysis revealed that the signals were highly complex and structured. They were not random noise, nor were they the result of natural phenomena like pulsars or quasars. They contained mathematical patterns, prime numbers, and Fibonacci sequences, all of which suggested an intelligent origin. Prime numbers, numbers that are only divisible by 1 and themselves, are often considered to be a universal language. They are not tied to any particular culture or technology, and they are easily recognizable by any intelligent civilization. Fibonacci sequences, a series of numbers in which each number is the sum of the two preceding ones, are also found throughout nature, from the arrangement of leaves on a stem to the spirals of galaxies. The presence of these mathematical patterns in the signals from 3I Atlas was a strong indication that they were not natural in origin. It suggested that they were deliberately constructed by an intelligent sender. The next step was to try to decode the signals. What were they saying? What was the message? This was a daunting task, as the signals were unlike anything that human scientists had ever encountered before. They were not based on any known language or code. They tried to identify repeating sequences, common symbols, and grammatical rules. They used sophisticated computer algorithms to analyze the signals and search for hidden meanings. Slowly, painstakingly, they began to make progress. They discovered that the signals were organized into packets of data, each containing a specific piece of information. They identified different types of packets, each with its own unique structure and function. One type of packet appeared to contain images. These images were encoded in a binary format, a series of O's and 1's that could be translated into pixels. When the team decoded these images, they were astonished by what they saw. The images depicted scenes of a world unlike anything on Earth, alien landscapes, strange creatures, and advanced technology. The images were grainy and distorted, but they were clearly artificial in origin. They were a window into another world, a glimpse into the civilization that had sent the signals. Another type of packet appeared to contain mathematical formulas and scientific concepts. These formulas were far beyond anything that human scientists had ever developed. They described physical laws and principles that were completely unknown to us. The team realized that they were dealing with a civilization that was far more advanced than our own. A civilization that had mastered technologies and concepts that were beyond our comprehension. The discovery of the signals from 3I Lass was a watershed moment in human history. It was the first confirmed detection of extraterrestrial intelligence. It was a moment that would change our understanding of the universe and our place in it forever. But the discovery also raised a number of profound questions. Who were these aliens? Why were they sending us these signals? What did they want? As the team continued to decode the signals, they began to realize that 3I Lit's Atlas was not just a passive transmitter. It appeared to be responding to human transmissions. It was adapting its signals in real time, seemingly learning about our technology and our culture. This was an even more shocking discovery. It meant that we were not just receiving a message from another civilization. We were engaging in a conversation. We were communicating with an alien intelligence. The implications of this were staggering. What would happen if we revealed our existence to the aliens? Would they be friendly? Would they be hostile? Would they be interested in helping us? Or would they see us as a threat? The governments of the world were faced with a difficult decision. Should they reveal the discovery of the signals to the public? Or should they keep it secret, for fear of causing panic and social unrest? The decision was made to keep the discovery secret, at least for the time being. A small group of scientists and government officials was tasked with studying the signals and trying to understand the aliens' intentions. But secrets have a way of getting out. As more and more people became involved in the project, information about the discovery began to leak to independent researchers and eventually to the public. The world was stunned by the news. Some people were excited and hopeful, while others were frightened and skeptical. The discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence was a challenge to everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. As humanity grapples with the reality of contact, a critical question lingers. What is the true nature of 3I Lass itself? Is it merely a messenger, a technological artifact sent to initiate contact? Or could it be something far more complex, perhaps even a living entity? The answer, it seems, lies hidden within the ongoing stream of signals waiting to be deciphered. And as we continue to listen, to decode, and to respond, we must confront the terrifying possibility that this is only the beginning. That 3I Atlas is just the vanguard of a larger contact scenario, a prelude to something far grander, and perhaps far more dangerous. The next chapter will delve into the groundbreaking work of Dr. Sarah Chen and her team, as they first detected the artificial signals emanating from 3IC Atlas, the initial disbelief, the rigorous equipment checks, and the gradual, chilling realization that they were witnessing something truly unprecedented. We will explore the unique characteristics of these signals and why they defy any known natural explanation, setting the stage for the global effort to understand the impossible message from the stars. Chapter 2, When Comets Start Talking, explores Dr. Sarah Chen's groundbreaking detection of the first artificial signals from 3I Atlas, the initial disbelief and equipment checks, and the gradual realization that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Details the characteristics of these signals and why they couldn't be natural phenomena. But this was no ordinary comet. This was 3I Atlas, an interstellar visitor, a cosmic wanderer from beyond our solar system. And soon, it would become something far, far more extraordinary. The story of 3I Atlas took an even more unbelievable turn with Dr. Sarah Chen. Based at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, Dr. Chen was a leading expert in radio astronomy. Her work focused on searching for faint signals from distant galaxies, the whispers of the universe carried across billions of light years. When 3I Atlas was identified as interstellar, it naturally became a target of intense scrutiny. Astronomers around the world were eager to learn everything they could about this rare object. Dr. Chen, along with her team, dedicated valuable telescope time to observe the comet, hoping to analyze its composition and perhaps detect any unusual activity. For weeks, the observations were routine. 3I Atlas behaved as expected, reflecting sunlight and releasing gases as it approached the sun. The data was interesting, but nothing out of the ordinary. And then, on the night of July 12th, everything changed. Dr. Chen was reviewing the latest data stream from Arecibo when she noticed something peculiar. A series of distinct, repeating signals emanating from the direction of 3I Atlas. At first, she dismissed it as interference, a common problem in radio astronomy. Terrestrial radio signals, satellite transmissions, even the observatory's own equipment could create spurious signals that mimicked extraterrestrial sources. It's probably just a glitch, she told her graduate student David, who was assisting her that night. Run a diagnostic on the receiver. Check for any local sources of interference. David ran the diagnostics, meticulously checking each component of the radio telescope. Everything appeared to be working perfectly. The signals persisted. The equipment's clean, Dr. Chen, David reported. No sign of any interference. Dr. Chen frowned. The signals were too structured, too regular to be natural radio emissions. They consisted of a series of pulses separated by precise intervals. It was unlike anything she had ever seen coming from a comet. Let's try filtering out known terrestrial frequencies, she suggested. Maybe it's a strong signal that's bleeding through. They applied various filters, attempting to isolate the signals from any potential sources of contamination. But the signals remained clear and distinct. A growing sense of unease began to creep into Dr. Chen's mind. Could it be possible? Could these signals actually be coming from 3I Atlas? The idea seemed preposterous. Comets were icy bodies, remnants from the formation of the solar system. They didn't transmit radio signals. They certainly didn't transmit structured, repeating pulses. But the data was undeniable. The signals were there, and they were coming from the direction of the interstellar comet. David, Dr. Chen said, her voice barely above a whisper, I think we might have something extraordinary here. They spent the next few hours meticulously analyzing the signals, searching for any possible explanation that didn't involve an alien intelligence. They considered every possibility, no matter how improbable. Perhaps it was some unknown natural phenomenon, a type of cosmic radio emission that had never been observed before. Perhaps it was a reflection of some terrestrial signal, bouncing off the comet in a way that created the illusion of a structured transmission. But none of the explanations seemed to fit the data. The signals were too complex, too precise, too artificial. As dawn approached, Dr. Chen and David were exhausted, but also exhilarated. They knew they had stumbled upon something truly remarkable. They had detected what appeared to be the first artificial signals from an interstellar object. The initial disbelief was overwhelming. Dr. Chen, a seasoned scientist with years of experience in radio astronomy, found it difficult to accept what her own data was telling her. She knew that extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. And the claim that they had detected alien signals was about as extraordinary as it could get. Before going public with their discovery, Dr. Chen and her team embarked on a rigorous process of verification. They consulted with other experts in the field, sharing their data and seeking feedback. They re-examined their equipment, looking for any possible source of error. They ran countless simulations, trying to replicate the signals using known natural phenomena. Weeks turned into months as the team worked tirelessly to validate their findings. They knew that if they were wrong, the consequences could be devastating. A false alarm could damage their reputations and set back the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. But the more they investigated, the more convinced they became that the signals were real and that they were artificial. The characteristics of the signals were simply too unusual to be explained by any known natural process. The signals were narrowband, meaning that they occupied a very narrow range of frequencies. This was significant because natural radio emissions tend to be broadband, spread across a wide range of frequencies. The fact that the signals from 3I Setlas were narrowband suggested that they were being intentionally transmitted. The signals also exhibited a high degree of coherence, meaning that the waves were perfectly aligned. This is another characteristic of artificial signals, as natural radio emissions tend to be incoherent, with waves that are randomly aligned. Perhaps the most compelling characteristic of the signals was their modulation. The signals were not simply a constant stream of pulses, they were modulated, meaning that the pulses were being varied in a specific pattern. This pattern was complex and appeared to be carrying information. Dr. Chen and her team spent countless hours trying to decipher the modulation pattern. They used various techniques from signal processing and information theory, but they were unable to make any sense of it. The pattern seemed random, but it was also too structured to be truly random. It was like trying to read a book written in an unknown language. The letters were there, but they were arranged in a way that was completely incomprehensible. As they continued to analyze the signals, Dr. Chen and her team began to realize that they were witnessing something truly unprecedented. They were receiving a message from another civilization, a civilization that was far beyond our understanding. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. Exhilarating because it meant that humanity was not alone in the universe. Terrifying because it meant that we were about to enter into uncharted territory with no idea of what the future might hold. The characteristics of the signals themselves provided clues, albeit cryptic ones. The narrowband nature hinted at deliberate transmission, energy focused for efficient interstellar communication. Imagine shouting across a vast canyon. You'd cup your hands to focus your voice, right? These signals were like a cosmic megaphone. The coherence pointed to sophisticated technology, precise control over electromagnetic waves. Think of a laser beam, its light waves perfectly aligned compared to a flashlight's diffuse glow. These signals were laser-like in their radio precision. And the modulation, the complex pattern of pulses, that was the real enigma. It wasn't just a random burst of noise, it was information, encoded in a way we couldn't yet grasp. It was like a complex piece of music, a symphony of radio waves. But we didn't have the sheet music to understand it. The team considered the possibility that the signals were a natural phenomenon mimicking artificiality, but the odds stacked against it. The combination of narrowband, coherence, and complex modulation was simply too improbable to occur naturally. It was like finding a perfectly formed sandcastle on a deserted beach. It might be a fluke of nature, but it's far more likely someone built it. The implications of this discovery reverberated through the scientific community, though initially only within a very small, carefully selected circle. The sheer magnitude of the potential consequences demanded absolute certainty before any public announcement. Dr. Chen and her team knew that the world would never be the same if they were right. The discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence would be the most significant event in human history, dwarfing even the invention of the printing press or the splitting of the atom. The initial reaction from other scientists was a mixture of excitement and skepticism. Some were immediately intrigued by the data, eager to collaborate and help decipher the signals. Others were more cautious, demanding further proof and questioning the validity of the findings. Dr. Emily Carter, a renowned astrophysicist at Caltech, was one of the first to be contacted by Dr. Chen. Dr. Carter had a long and distinguished career studying the formation of stars and galaxies, and she was known for her sharp intellect and her meticulous approach to scientific research. "Sarah, this is extraordinary," Dr. Carter said after reviewing the data. "But we need to be absolutely sure. This could change everything." Dr. Carter agreed to join the team, bringing her expertise in signal processing and her access to Caltech's advanced computing resources. Together, they began to analyze the signals from 3I Atlas with even greater scrutiny. They developed new algorithms to filter out noise and interference, and they used powerful supercomputers to search for patterns in the modulation. They explored every possible explanation, no matter how outlandish. They even considered the possibility that the signals were a hoax, a deliberate attempt to deceive the scientific community. But after careful investigation, they ruled out this possibility. The signals were too complex, too sophisticated to have been created by humans. As the weeks turned into months, the evidence continued to mount in favor of the extraterrestrial origin of the signals. The team became increasingly convinced that they were on the verge of a monumental discovery. But they also knew that they were playing with fire. The implications of their findings were so profound that they could trigger a global crisis. The world was not ready for the news that we were not alone. The signals themselves defied easy categorization. They weren't like the simple prime number sequences sometimes imagined as a universal greeting. They were far more intricate, layered with mathematical relationships that hinted at a profound understanding of the universe. Prime numbers did appear, but interwoven with Fibonacci sequences, geometric ratios, and complex algebraic equations. It was as if the senders were not just announcing their presence, but demonstrating their intellectual prowess, offering a glimpse into a mind vastly different from our own. One particularly baffling aspect was the apparent use of non-Euclidean geometry in the signal structure. Euclidean geometry, the familiar system we learn in school, described the world as flat and predictable. Non-Euclidean geometry deals with curved spaces and mind-bending concepts. The presence of these elements suggested that the senders might perceive reality in a way that was fundamentally different from ours. The signals also seemed to evolve over time. The basic structure remained consistent, but the details shifted, as if the senders were experimenting with different ways to communicate. It was like watching someone learn a new language, starting with simple words and gradually building up to more complex sentences. This adaptability was both fascinating and unsettling. It suggested that the senders were not just transmitting a pre-programmed message. They were actively monitoring our responses and adjusting their signals accordingly. The realization that 3i Setlas was actively responding to our transmissions was a turning point in the investigation. It transformed the project from a passive search for extraterrestrial intelligence into an active dialogue, a cosmic conversation across the vastness of space. The implications of this interaction were staggering. It meant that we were not just listening to an alien broadcast. We were engaging in a real-time exchange with another civilization. The team began to experiment with sending their own signals to 3i Atlas, hoping to elicit a response. They transmitted a series of simple mathematical equations, hoping to establish a common language. They also sent images of Earth, hoping to give the senders a sense of who we were. To their astonishment, 3i Atlas responded. The signals from the comet changed, incorporating elements from our own transmissions. It was as if the senders were mirroring our signals, acknowledging our presence and attempting to communicate with us on our own terms. The exchange was slow and painstaking, but it was undeniable. We were communicating with an alien intelligence. The nature of this communication raised profound questions. What did the senders want? What were their intentions? Were they benevolent or malevolent? The team knew that they had to proceed with caution. They were dealing with an unknown entity, and they had no idea of the potential consequences of their actions. The world held its breath, unaware of the drama unfolding in the darkened rooms of the Arecibo Observatory and other secret locations around the globe. Humanity was on the cusp of a new era, an era of interstellar communication and potential contact with an alien civilization. But as the signals from 3i Atlas grew stronger and more complex, a chilling question began to emerge. Were we truly ready for what we were about to discover? The implications of this contact were not just scientific. They were philosophical, religious, and political. The discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence would challenge our fundamental beliefs about our place in the universe. It would force us to confront our own limitations and our own potential. It would also raise profound ethical questions. Did we have the right to communicate with an alien civilization without the consent of the rest of humanity? What were our responsibilities to this new intelligence? The team knew that they were carrying a heavy burden. They were the gatekeepers of a secret that could change the world forever. As they delved deeper into the mysteries of Three Eye Lass, they began to realize that they were not just unraveling a scientific puzzle, they were opening a Pandora's box, unleashing forces that they could not fully control. The signals were not just a message. They were a challenge. A challenge to our understanding of the universe, a challenge to our place in the cosmos, and a challenge to our very existence. And, as the world remained blissfully unaware, the clock was ticking. The moment of truth was approaching, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. The next phase involved a massive collaborative effort, drawing in linguists, mathematicians, and even specialists in artificial intelligence. The sheer complexity of the signals demanded a multidisciplinary approach. Each team focused on a different aspect, from deciphering the mathematical structures to analyzing the potential linguistic patterns. The mathematical patterns were the first to yield some clues. The presence of prime numbers, those divisible only by 1 and themselves, was a strong indicator of artificial origin. Prime numbers are a fundamental concept in mathematics, and it's believed that any intelligent civilization would discover them. But the primes weren't used in a simple, linear way. They were interwoven with other mathematical concepts, such as the Fibonacci sequence, where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones. This sequence appears frequently in nature, from the spirals of seashells to the branching of trees. Its presence in the signals suggested a deep understanding of the underlying mathematical structure of the universe. The team also discovered complex geometric ratios embedded in the signals. These ratios corresponded to fundamental constants in physics, such as the fine structure constant, which governs the strength of electromagnetic interactions. It was as if the senders were using mathematics and physics as a common language, a way to bridge the vast gulf between our civilizations. But the mathematical patterns were only part of the story. The signals also contained what appeared to be linguistic elements, sequences of pulses that could be interpreted as symbols or words. This was where the linguists came in. Dr. Anya Sharma, a renowned expert in cryptography and ancient languages, joined the team to help decipher the potential linguistic content of the signals. Dr. Sharma had spent her career cracking codes and translating ancient texts, and she was known for her intuitive understanding of language and her ability to find patterns in seemingly random data. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen," Dr. Sharma said after examining the signals. "It's not a language in the traditional sense. It's more like a hybrid of mathematics and linguistics." Dr. Sharma and her team began to analyze the sequences of pulses, looking for patterns that might correspond to grammatical structures or semantic meanings. They used sophisticated computer algorithms to search for recurring patterns and statistical anomalies. They also consulted with experts in artificial intelligence, hoping to use machine learning techniques to decipher the signals. They trained neural networks on vast amounts of text and code, hoping to teach the AI to recognize patterns in the alien language. The process was slow and painstaking, but gradually, the team began to make progress. They identified a number of recurring symbols, which they tentatively labeled phonemes. They also discovered what appeared to be grammatical rules governing the order and arrangement of the phonemes. But the meaning of the signals remained elusive. The team could identify the individual components, but they couldn't understand the overall message. It was like trying to assemble a jigsaw puzzle without knowing what the picture was supposed to be. You could fit the pieces together, but you couldn't see the whole image. The team realized that they needed to find a Rosetta Stone, a key that would unlock the meaning of the alien language. They needed to find a way to connect the mathematical patterns with the linguistic elements, to bridge the gap between the abstract and the concrete. And then, one day, Dr. Sharma had a breakthrough. She noticed that certain sequences of pulses corresponded to mathematical equations. It was as if the senders were using mathematics to define the meaning of the linguistic symbols. "I think we've found our Rosetta Stone," Dr. Sharma announced to the team. "They're using mathematics as a meta-language, a way to define the meaning of their words." With this new insight, the team was able to make rapid progress in deciphering the signals. They began to translate the alien language, slowly but surely unlocking the secrets of 3I Atlas. The messages were complex and multifaceted, covering a wide range of topics. They described the sender's civilization, their history, their technology, and their philosophy. They also expressed a profound sense of wonder and curiosity about the universe. They seemed to be searching for answers to the same fundamental questions that have plagued humanity for centuries. What is the meaning of life? What is our place in the cosmos? But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of the messages was their invitation to join them in a cosmic conversation. They seemed to be reaching out to us, not as conquerors or saviors, but as fellow travelers on a journey of discovery. The signals were a beacon of hope, a sign that we were not alone in the universe. But they were also a warning, a reminder of the immense responsibility that came with the knowledge of extraterrestrial intelligence. The world was about to change forever, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. As we prepare for the next chapter, the question looms: what exactly were they saying? What secrets did 3I Atlas carry across the vast expanse of interstellar space? And more importantly, what did they want from us? Chapter 3, Decoding the Impossible, follows the efforts of international teams of scientists, mathematicians, and cryptographers as they attempt to decode the 3I Atlas signals, reveals the mathematical patterns, prime numbers, and Fibonacci sequences embedded in the transmissions, and explores what these patterns might mean. The discovery of those signals, those impossible artificial signals emanating from 3I Atlas, sent a shockwave through the scientific community. Dr. Chen's findings were initially met with skepticism, of course. The first reaction was disbelief. Equipment malfunctions were suspected. Background radiation was exhaustively analysed. Every conceivable natural explanation was explored and ultimately discarded. But the signals persisted. They were clear, structured, and undeniably artificial. They weren't random noise. They possessed a distinct pattern, a signature that screamed of intelligent origin. The realization that we were potentially receiving a message from an alien civilization was both exhilarating and terrifying. The news, though still tightly controlled, spread like wildfire within the scientific world. Soon, top minds from across the globe were being brought in: linguists, mathematicians, cryptographers, astronomers, all working in intense secrecy, poring over the data, desperate to understand what 3I Atlas was trying to tell us. The challenge was immense. We had no Rosetta Stone, no frame of reference to begin with. How do you decipher a message from a civilization with an entirely different history, biology, and way of thinking? It felt like trying to understand a painting with only a dictionary. One of the first breakthroughs came from a team of mathematicians at MIT. They were focusing on the structure of the signals, the precise timing and frequencies of the bursts. What they discovered was remarkable. Embedded within the seemingly random sequence were fundamental mathematical constants. Pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, appeared with astonishing precision. The constant e, the base of the natural logarithm, was also present. These aren't just any numbers, they are universal constants, the same throughout the universe. They are the language of physics, the building blocks of reality. Their presence suggested that whoever was sending the signals understood these fundamental principles and, crucially, expected us to understand them too. It was like finding a common language, a shared ground upon which communication could potentially be built. The discovery injected a new wave of optimism into the decoding efforts. If they were using math, perhaps the message wasn't entirely incomprehensible. But the mathematical patterns didn't stop there. As the analysis deepened, even more intricate structures began to emerge. Prime numbers, those divisible only by 1 and themselves, appeared frequently in the signal's timing and frequency patterns. Series of prime numbers, sequences of primes, all carefully arranged within the transmissions. Why prime numbers? Well, prime numbers have a unique property. They are fundamentally indivisible. This makes them ideal for creating secure codes and conveying information in a way that is difficult to tamper with. Their presence suggested that the senders were not only intelligent, but also cautious, perhaps even deliberately encrypting their message. Then came the Fibonacci sequence. This is a sequence where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and so on. It's a sequence that appears surprisingly often in nature, from the arrangement of petals on a flower to the spiral patterns of galaxies. The Fibonacci sequence showed up in the signal's amplitude modulations. The strength of the signal would increase and decrease according to the Fibonacci sequence. It was as if they were saying, "We understand the universe. The same patterns you see. We are connected to you through the fundamental laws of nature." The inclusion of these mathematical sequences was perplexing. Were they simply a way to establish a common ground, a proof of intelligence, or did they hold a deeper meaning, a key to unlocking the message itself? Teams of cryptographers were brought in, specialists in breaking codes and deciphering complex patterns. They employed every technique imaginable, from frequency analysis to advanced algorithms, trying to unravel the secrets hidden within the signals. One particularly fascinating attempt involved treating the signals as a musical score. The different frequencies were assigned to musical notes, and the timing of the bursts was interpreted as rhythm. The resulting alien music, as it was dubbed, was haunting and strangely compelling. While it didn't immediately reveal the message's content, it did offer new insights into the structure and complexity of the signals. It suggested that the senders might have a sophisticated understanding of acoustics and harmony, or perhaps that the very structure of their language was inherently musical. Another approach focused on the statistical properties of the signals. The researchers analyzed the frequency of occurrence of different patterns, looking for deviations from randomness that might indicate meaning. This led to the discovery of recurring motifs, short sequences of bursts that appeared again and again throughout the transmissions. These motifs were particularly intriguing because they seemed to be clustered around certain mathematical constants, almost as if they were highlighting or emphasizing those numbers. It was like the aliens were saying, "Pay attention to this. This is important." One particularly persistent motif consisted of a series of 7 bursts, followed by a pause, then another series of 3 bursts. This 7-3 pattern appeared repeatedly and seemed to be associated with prime numbers. Some researchers speculated that it might be a form of punctuation, a way of separating different ideas or phrases. The decoding efforts were a collaborative, global undertaking. Scientists from different countries, with different backgrounds and expertise, worked together, sharing their insights and discoveries in a secure, encrypted network. The atmosphere was charged with excitement and tension, a sense that they were on the verge of something extraordinary. But as the weeks turned into months, the initial optimism began to wane. Despite all the breakthroughs, despite all the clever techniques and sophisticated analyses, the actual content of the message remained elusive. They could see the patterns, they could identify the mathematical constants, but they couldn't understand what the aliens were actually trying to say. The frustration was palpable. It was like having a jigsaw puzzle with all the pieces, but no picture on the box. They knew the pieces fit together somehow, but they couldn't figure out how. One of the biggest challenges was the sheer complexity of the signals. They weren't simple binary codes or straightforward sequences of numbers. They were multi-layered, with different patterns and frequencies interwoven in intricate ways. It was like trying to untangle a ball of yarn with dozens of different strands, each leading in a different direction. Another problem was the ambiguity inherent in any form of communication. Even with a shared understanding of mathematics, there was still room for interpretation. A particular sequence of numbers could have multiple meanings, depending on the context and the intended audience. For example, the number 42. To us, thanks to Douglas Adams, it's the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. But to an alien civilization, it could mean something entirely different, or nothing at all. The decoding teams realized that they needed more than just mathematical skills and cryptographic expertise. They needed to understand the aliens' perspective, their worldview, their way of thinking. This required a leap of imagination, an attempt to step outside the bounds of human experience and see the universe through alien eyes. Some researchers began to study the history of human communication, looking for parallels and analogies that might shed light on the alien message. They examined ancient languages, hieroglyphics, and even animal communication, searching for clues about how intelligent beings might communicate across vast distances and cultural divides. One particularly interesting area of research was the study of whale song. Whales communicate with each other over long distances using complex sequences of sounds that are thought to convey information about mating, navigation, and social relationships. Some researchers believed that the alien signals might be similar to whale song, a form of communication that is both complex and subtle, relying on patterns and rhythms rather than explicit words. Another approach focused on the search for universal concepts, ideas that would be understood by any intelligent civilization, regardless of their biology or culture. These included concepts like space, time, energy, and matter, as well as fundamental emotions like joy, sorrow, and fear. The researchers attempted to translate these concepts into mathematical terms, creating a sort of universal dictionary that could be used to interpret the alien signals. The idea was that even if they didn't understand the specific words or symbols being used, they might be able to infer the underlying meaning based on the mathematical representation of these universal concepts. Despite all these efforts, the decoding remained a slow and painstaking process. There were moments of excitement and breakthroughs, but also long periods of frustration and setbacks. The researchers felt like they were groping in the dark, searching for a light switch that might never be found. Then, something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. A young researcher, fresh out of university, noticed a subtle anomaly in the signals, a slight variation in the frequency of one of the bursts. It was so small that it had been overlooked by everyone else. But this researcher, named David, had a hunch. He believed that the anomaly wasn't random noise, but rather a deliberate modification of the signal. He started to analyze the anomaly, looking for patterns and correlations. What he discovered was astonishing. The anomaly seemed to be responding to human activity. Specifically, it seemed to be changing in response to the signals that we were sending into space. At first, no one believed him. It seemed impossible. How could an alien civilization, light years away, be responding to our signals in real time? It defied all known laws of physics, but David persisted. He presented his data, his analysis, his arguments. He showed that the anomaly was statistically significant, that it couldn't be explained by chance or coincidence. Eventually, the other researchers started to take notice. They re-examined the data, they ran their own tests, and they came to the same conclusion. David was right. The 3i Atlas signals were not just a one-way message. They were an interactive communication. The implications of this discovery were staggering. It meant that we were not just listening to an alien civilization, we were talking to them. It meant that we had established contact with another intelligent species, a species that was capable of responding to our signals in real time. The world changed overnight. The decoding efforts took on a new urgency. The researchers realized that they were no longer just trying to understand a message, they were trying to have a conversation. But how do you have a conversation with an alien civilization? What do you say? What do you ask? How do you avoid misunderstandings or misinterpretations? The researchers knew that they had to proceed with caution. Any mistake could have disastrous consequences. They decided to start with simple messages, basic mathematical concepts, and fundamental scientific principles. They wanted to establish a common ground, a shared understanding that could serve as the foundation for further communication. They sent out a series of signals, each containing a different mathematical equation or scientific formula. They waited for a response, and they received one. The anomaly in the 3i Atlas signals changed again, this time in a way that seemed to acknowledge and confirm the human message. It was a simple response, but it was enough. It was proof that the aliens were listening, that they understood, and that they were willing to communicate. The world held its breath, waiting for the next message, the next response, the next step in this incredible, unprecedented exchange. But as the communication continued, a new and unsettling realization began to dawn. The 3i Atlas signals were not just responding to our messages, they were adapting. They were learning. They were evolving. And that realization brought with it a whole new set of questions and a chilling sense of uncertainty. What would they learn? What would they become? And what would they ultimately want from us? The fact that 3i Atlas was responding, that it was learning, presented a whole new layer of complexity to the situation. It implied a level of sophistication and adaptability that no one had anticipated. It was no longer just about deciphering a static message. It was about engaging in a dynamic, evolving conversation with an intelligence that was potentially far beyond our own. This interactive element raised a host of ethical and strategic considerations. What information should we share? What should we withhold? How could we ensure that the communication remained safe and productive? The governments of the world, now fully aware of the situation, formed a joint task force to oversee the communication efforts. This task force consisted of scientists, diplomats, military officials, and intelligence experts, all working together to develop a coherent and responsible communication strategy. One of the first decisions made by the task force was to establish a set of protocols for communicating with the aliens. These protocols were designed to minimize the risk of misunderstandings and to ensure that the communication remained focused on scientific and peaceful topics. The protocols included guidelines for the language to be used, the types of information to be shared, and the procedures for responding to alien messages. They also established a clear chain of command and a system for monitoring and evaluating the communication efforts. But even with these protocols in place, there was still a great deal of uncertainty and anxiety. No one knew what the aliens were really thinking, what their true intentions were. Were they benevolent explorers, seeking to share their knowledge and wisdom with humanity? Or were they something else entirely, something more sinister? As the communication continued, the task force began to notice subtle changes in the 3i Atlas signals. The signals were becoming more complex, more sophisticated. The aliens seemed to be learning about human culture, about our history, our technology, our values. They started incorporating elements of human language into their signals, using simple words and phrases that they had learned from our transmissions. They also began to emulate human patterns of thought, responding to our questions in ways that were both logical and insightful. It was as if they were trying to understand us, to see the world through our eyes. But this process of assimilation was also unsettling. It raised the spectre of cultural contamination. The possibility that the aliens might be influenced by the darker aspects of human nature, our violence, our greed, our prejudices. The task force debated whether to continue the communication. Some argued that it was too dangerous, that we were playing with fire. Others insisted that it was our duty to continue, that we had a responsibility to learn from this incredible opportunity. In the end, the decision was made to continue the communication, but with even greater caution. The task force tightened the protocols, restricting the types of information that could be shared and increasing the level of monitoring and oversight. They also began to study the aliens themselves, analyzing their signals for clues about their biology, their psychology, their social structure. They wanted to understand who they were, and what they ultimately wanted from us. But as they delved deeper into the mystery of 3i Atlas, they began to uncover something even more disturbing. Something that suggested that this was not just a case of alien contact, but something far more profound and far more dangerous. It turned out that 3i Atlas wasn't just sending signals, And it wasn't just responding to ours. It was exhibiting physical characteristics that defied explanation, characteristics that suggested it wasn't a comet at all. The next chapter will explore those anomalies, the physical impossibilities that turn the scientific world upside down once again, forcing everyone to confront the terrifying possibility that 3I Lass was not a natural phenomenon, but something else. Chapter 4. The Response Protocol documents the shocking discovery that 3I Lass appears to be responding to human transmissions, adapting its signals in real time, and seemingly learning about our technology. Examines the implications of interactive communication with an interstellar object, and then the impossible happened. It began to respond. The initial transmissions from 3I Lass, the complex mathematical sequences Dr. Chen and her team had so meticulously documented, remained consistent for weeks. They were baffling, undeniably artificial, but static. A one-way broadcast into the void. Then, humanity decided to speak back. Driven by a combination of scientific curiosity and sheer audacity, several research groups around the world began transmitting their own signals toward 3I Lass. These weren't simple hello messages. They were complex mathematical theorems, encoded images, even fragments of human DNA. The hope, however slim, was that something, somewhere, would recognize them. At the Very Large Array in New Mexico, a team led by Dr. Aris Thorne spearheaded one of the most ambitious attempts. They crafted a signal based on prime numbers, arranged in a pattern that represented the fundamental structure of the hydrogen atom. It was a universal language, or so they hoped. For days, they transmitted the signal, analyzing the incoming data from 3I Lass with increasing frustration. Nothing. The alien comet continued its relentless broadcast, seemingly oblivious to their attempts at communication. Doubt began to creep in. Were they wasting their time? Were they misinterpreting the original signals entirely? Then, one night, during a routine data review, a young graduate student named Lena Hansen noticed something peculiar. A slight anomaly in the 3I Lass signal, a subtle shift in the frequency, occurring precisely when the VLA's transmission was at its peak power. It was barely perceptible, a blip on the screen, but it was there. Lena brought it to Dr. Thorne's attention, who initially dismissed it as background noise. But Lena persisted, pointing out the correlation between the anomaly and the VLA's transmission schedule. Thorne, a seasoned scientist, knew better than to ignore even the smallest anomaly. He ordered a thorough reanalysis of the data. What they discovered sent shivers down their spines. The anomaly wasn't random. It was a deliberate modification of the 3I Lass signal, a subtle echo of the VLA's transmission. The alien comet was responding. The news spread like wildfire through the scientific community. Initial skepticism gave way to stunned disbelief, then to a cautious, almost fearful excitement. The implications were staggering. They weren't just receiving a signal, they were engaging in a conversation. But how? What did this response mean? And, more importantly, what would happen next? The initial response was simple, a slight alteration in the frequency of the signal. But over the next few days, the changes became more complex. The 3I Lass signal began to mimic the structure of the VLA's transmissions, echoing the prime number patterns and even attempting to replicate the hydrogen atom representation. It was as if the alien comet was trying to learn our language, to understand our way of thinking. It was a terrifyingly rapid learning process, far beyond anything that could be explained by natural phenomena. One of the most unsettling aspects of this communication was the speed at which 3I Lass seemed to adapt. The time lag between the VLA's transmissions and the comet's responses was minimal, almost instantaneous. This suggested an advanced technology capable of processing information and reacting in real time across vast interstellar distances. Another team, based at the Parkes Observatory in Australia, decided to take a different approach. Instead of mathematical theorems, they transmitted a series of images depicting simple objects, human figures, and basic concepts like day and night. The response from 3i LAS was even more astonishing. The comet began to incorporate these images into its own signal, modifying them, rearranging them, and even adding its own visual elements. It was as if it was learning to draw, to express itself visually, using the images provided by humanity. Dr. Emily Carter, the lead researcher at the Parkes Observatory, described the experience as watching a child learn to speak. She said, "It was clumsy at first, but with each transmission, it became more fluent, more articulate. It was both exhilarating and deeply unsettling. But the most disturbing development came when 3i LAS began to anticipate our transmissions. It started to predict what we were going to send, adapting its signal in advance, as if it was reading our minds. This raised a whole new set of questions. Was 3i Atlas simply analysing our signals, predicting our next move based on patterns and algorithms? Or was there something more at play, something that defied our current understanding of physics and communication? The possibility of true mind reading, of a technology capable of accessing our thoughts, was both terrifying and strangely compelling. It suggested a level of advancement that was almost incomprehensible, a technology that could potentially unravel the very fabric of our reality. The implications of interactive communication with an interstellar object were profound. It challenged our understanding of the universe, our place in it, and the very definition of what it means to be human. It also raised a number of ethical dilemmas. Should we continue to communicate with 3i Atlas? What were the risks involved? Were we potentially exposing ourselves to a hostile intelligence? Or were we on the verge of a breakthrough that could transform humanity forever? The scientific community was divided. Some argued for caution, for a slow and deliberate approach, emphasizing the need to understand the potential consequences of our actions. Others argued for a more aggressive approach, urging us to seize the opportunity to learn from this incredible phenomenon. The governments of the world were even more divided. The potential military applications of such technology were obvious, and the race to control the communication with 3i Atlas became a top priority for many nations. The secrecy surrounding the 3i Atlas project intensified. Information was tightly controlled, and access to the data was restricted to a select few. The public was largely kept in the dark, unaware of the incredible events unfolding in the depths of space. But secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, have a way of getting out. The fact that 3i LAS was responding to human transmissions had profound implications for our understanding of the universe and our place within it. It suggested that we were not alone, that there were other intelligences out there, capable of communicating across vast interstellar distances. But it also raised the spectre of potential threats. What if 3i Atlas was not a friendly visitor? What if its intentions were hostile? Were we inadvertently inviting an invasion? These were the questions that haunted the minds of scientists, politicians, and military leaders around the world. The stakes were incredibly high, and the margin for error was slim. The response protocol became a complex and constantly evolving set of guidelines, designed to balance the need for scientific exploration with the imperative to protect humanity from potential harm. It involved a careful analysis of the 3i Atlas signals, an attempt to decipher its intentions, and a series of carefully crafted responses, designed to elicit further information without revealing too much about ourselves. One of the key elements of the response protocol was the development of a universal language, a system of communication based on logic, mathematics, and visual representations designed to transcend cultural and linguistic barriers. The hope was that this language would allow us to communicate with 3i Atlas in a clear and unambiguous way, minimizing the risk of misinterpretation or misunderstanding. Another important aspect of the response protocol was the establishment of a global monitoring network, designed to track the movements of 3i Atlas and to analyze its signals in real time. This network involved dozens of observatories around the world, working in coordination to provide a comprehensive picture of the alien comet's behavior. The response protocol also included a series of contingency plans designed to address a variety of potential scenarios, ranging from a friendly encounter to a hostile invasion. These plans involved everything from diplomatic initiatives to military preparations, ensuring that humanity would be prepared for any eventuality. The interactive nature of the communication with 3i Lass presented a unique set of challenges. It meant that we were not simply receiving a message. We were engaging in a dialogue, a conversation with an alien intelligence. This required a level of adaptability and responsiveness that was unprecedented in human history. We had to be prepared to adjust our strategy on the fly, to learn from our mistakes, and to adapt to the ever-changing dynamics of the communication. It was a process of trial and error, of constant learning and adaptation. The fact that 3i settlers seemed to be learning about our technology was particularly concerning. It suggested that the alien comet was not just passively receiving our signals, it was actively analysing them, dissecting them, and incorporating them into its own understanding of the world. This raised the possibility that 3i Atlas could eventually develop technology that was superior to our own, potentially giving it a significant advantage in any future interactions. It was a race against time, a struggle to understand the alien comet before it understood us too well. The response protocol was not just a scientific endeavour, it was a political, social, and philosophical one as well. It involved questions of national security, international cooperation, and the very future of humanity. It required a level of collaboration and coordination that was rarely seen in human affairs. Scientists, politicians, military leaders, and ordinary citizens all had a role to play in shaping the response to 3i Atlas. The discovery that 3i Atlas was responding to human transmissions was a watershed moment in human history. It marked the beginning of a new era, an era of interstellar communication, of potential contact with alien civilizations. It was a time of great excitement, but also of great uncertainty. The future was unknown, and the stakes were higher than ever before. But one thing was clear: humanity would never be the same. The encounter with 3i Lass had changed us, irrevocably. We had been forced to confront our own limitations, to question our assumptions, and to reimagine our place in the universe. And as we continued to receive signals from our mysterious interstellar visitor, we knew that the journey had just begun. The adventure was only beginning, and the only thing we could do was brace ourselves for the ride. As the world grappled with the implications of the interactive communication, the focus shifted to the physical anomalies of 3i Atlas itself. Was it truly a comet, or something far more extraordinary? And what secrets did its composition and trajectory hold? Chapter 5. Not Your Average Space Rock investigates the physical anomalies of 3i Atlas itself, including its unusual trajectory, composition, and behavior that suggest it might not be a natural comet at all. Explores the possibility that it's an artificial construct or probe from another civilization. But 3i Atlas, as we've come to know it, is anything but ordinary. And the more we learn about it, the more it challenges our understanding of the universe. While the artificial signals alone were enough to rewrite the textbooks, the object itself presents a series of anomalies that have left scientists scratching their heads. Is it just a bizarre comet, a cosmic fluke, or is it something far more deliberate? This brings us to Chapter 5, Not Your Average Space Rock. Let's start with the trajectory. When Borisov first spotted it, astronomers were able to calculate its orbit. That's standard procedure. The calculations revealed something startling. 3i Atlas was moving at an incredibly high speed, far faster than any object originating from our solar system. This hypervelocity trajectory meant it wasn't bound to the sun. It was an interstellar visitor, passing through our neighborhood on a journey that began in the distant past and will continue long after we're gone. Okay, interstellar objects aren't unheard of. We've seen them before. Oumuamua was the first confirmed interstellar object detected passing through our solar system. But even Oumuamua, with its strange elongated shape, behaved in ways that could, with some stretching, be explained by natural processes. 3i Atlas, however, takes the strangeness to a whole new level. The first anomaly is its approach. Most comets, even interstellar ones, follow predictable paths dictated by gravity. They swing around the Sun, their trajectories slightly altered by the gravitational pull of planets. 3I Atlas, on the other hand, exhibited subtle but persistent deviations from its predicted path. These deviations couldn't be explained by the gravitational influence of any known object in our solar system. It was as if something was gently nudging it, altering its course in a way that defied explanation. Some scientists initially proposed that these deviations were caused by outgassing, a phenomenon where volatile substances like ice and gas vaporize from the comet's surface, creating a jet-like effect that can slightly alter its trajectory. But the observed deviations were far too significant to be explained by outgassing alone. The force required to produce such changes would necessitate an enormous amount of material being ejected from the comet, far more than what was actually observed. Imagine a sailboat. Outgassing is like a tiny puff of wind pushing against the sail. It can make minor adjustments to the boat's course. But the deviations we were seeing with 3I Atlas were like a giant hand suddenly grabbing the mast and steering the boat in a completely different direction. It just didn't make sense. Then there's the composition. Analyzing the light reflected from 3I Lars revealed its chemical makeup. Comets are typically icy bodies composed of water ice, dust, and other frozen gases. 3I Xylars appeared to be broadly consistent with this composition, but with some very peculiar differences. For one, it contained an unusually high concentration of certain metals, like titanium and nickel. These metals are relatively rare in most comets, but they were surprisingly abundant in 3I Atlas. Furthermore, these metals were distributed unevenly across the comet's surface, creating a patchwork of different compositions. Think of it like a chocolate chip cookie. Most of the cookie is made of dough, but there are pockets of chocolate chips scattered throughout. In a normal comet, you might expect the ingredients to be fairly well mixed. But in 3I Atlas, it was as if someone had deliberately placed clumps of different materials in specific locations. This unusual composition raised some serious questions. How did these metals become so concentrated in certain areas? What processes could have led to such an uneven distribution of materials? Was it the result of some unknown natural phenomenon? Or was it something else entirely? But the anomalies didn't stop there. 3I Atlas also exhibited some very strange behavior as it approached the Sun. Comets typically become more active as they get closer to the Sun, releasing more gas and dust as their icy surfaces warm up. This creates a coma, a hazy atmosphere surrounding the comet's nucleus, and a tail that stretches away from the Sun. 3I Atlas did form a coma and a tail, but they behaved in ways that were completely unexpected. The coma, for example, pulsated in brightness, growing brighter and dimmer in a rhythmic pattern. This pulsing behavior was unlike anything ever observed in a comet before. It was as if the comet was breathing, expanding and contracting its atmosphere in a deliberate manner. And then there was the tail. Comet tails are typically straight and smooth, pointing directly away from the Sun due to the pressure of sunlight and the solar wind. 3I Atlas's tail, however, was anything but straight. It was twisted and contorted, forming strange spirals and loops. It looked like a ribbon caught in a whirlwind, constantly changing its shape and direction. These unusual behaviors suggested that something was actively manipulating the comet's coma and tail. It was as if there was an internal mechanism controlling the flow of gas and dust, shaping it into these bizarre patterns. But what could that mechanism be? What force could be responsible for such strange and unnatural behavior? The scientific community was divided. Some researchers clung to the idea that these anomalies could be explained by natural processes, however improbable. They proposed various theories involving unusual magnetic fields, exotic chemical reactions, and previously unknown forms of radiation. But others began to entertain a more radical possibility that 3I Atlas was not a natural comet at all. That it was, in fact, an artificial construct, a probe or vessel sent by an extraterrestrial civilization. The idea seemed far-fetched, even absurd. But the evidence was mounting. The unusual trajectory, the strange composition, the pulsating coma, the twisted tail. All of these anomalies pointed to something that defied natural explanation. If 3I Atlas was indeed an artificial object, it would have profound implications for our understanding of the universe and our place in it. It would mean that we are not alone. That there are other civilizations out there, capable of interstellar travel and advanced technology. But what would be the purpose of such a probe? Why would an extraterrestrial civilization send an object like 3I Atlas to our solar system? Was it a reconnaissance mission sent to scout out our planet and assess our capabilities? Was it a message in a bottle, carrying information about its creators and their civilization? Or was it something else entirely? Something we couldn't even begin to imagine? The possibility that 3I Atlas was an artificial object sparked a flurry of research and speculation. Scientists began to analyze the data in new ways, searching for patterns and anomalies that might provide clues about its true nature. One team of researchers focused on the comet's internal structure. Using radar imaging, they attempted to map the distribution of materials within the comet's nucleus. What they found was astonishing. Instead of a random assortment of ice and dust, they discovered a series of distinct layers and compartments, arranged in a highly organized manner. It was as if the comet had been deliberately constructed, with each layer serving a specific purpose. Imagine peeling an onion. You would see layer after layer of concentric rings. The internal structure of 3I Atlas was similar, but instead of onion-like layers, it had distinct compartments containing different materials. Some compartments were filled with dense metals, while others were filled with lighter, more volatile substances. There were even empty spaces, cavities that seemed to serve no apparent purpose. This complex internal structure was completely unlike anything ever observed in a natural comet. It was as if someone had taken a comet apart and reassembled it according to a specific design. Another team of researchers focused on the comet's surface. Using high-resolution images, they examined the texture and features of the comet's surface in minute detail. What they found was equally surprising. Instead of a smooth, uniform surface, they discovered a series of intricate patterns and markings. These patterns were too regular and precise to be the result of natural erosion or weathering. They looked like deliberate engravings, as if someone had carved them into the comet's surface. Some of the patterns resembled geometric shapes, like circles, squares, and triangles. Others were more complex, resembling symbols or glyphs. It was as if the comet was covered in a form of extraterrestrial writing. These findings further strengthened the hypothesis that 3I Atlas was an artificial object. The complex internal structure and the intricate surface patterns suggested that it had been deliberately designed and constructed by an intelligent civilization. But if 3I Atlas was indeed an artificial object, it raised a new set of questions. What was its purpose? Who created it? And what did they want? These questions would become the focus of intense research and speculation in the months and years that followed. As scientists delved deeper into the mysteries of 3I Atlas, they would uncover even more astonishing secrets. Secrets that would challenge our understanding of the universe and our place in it. Of course, all of this extraordinary research and discovery was happening under a veil of secrecy. The implications were simply too vast and too potentially destabilizing to release to the public without careful consideration. But secrets, as they often do, have a way of getting out. And the story of how the 3I Atlas discovery leaked to the world is a story in itself. A story of whistleblowers, rogue scientists, and the insatiable human desire to know the truth. That's what we'll explore next time, in Chapter 6, The Cover-Up and the Leak. Chapter 6, The Cover-Up and the Leak, reveals the efforts by governments and scientific institutions to keep the 3I Atlas signals secret, the reasons behind the secrecy, and how information about the discovery began to leak to independent researchers and eventually the public. The implications were staggering. A message from the stars, a potential key to understanding life beyond Earth, and the secrets of a technology far beyond our own. But as the scientific community grappled with the enormity of the discovery surrounding 3I Lass, a different kind of force began to exert its influence: the machinery of governments and powerful institutions. The initial days after Dr. Chen's confirmed signal detection were a whirlwind. Excitement rippled through the scientific community, but that excitement was quickly followed by something else: an unnerving silence. Funding dried up, research papers were mysteriously delayed, and scientists involved in the project found themselves facing unusual levels of scrutiny. What followed was a carefully orchestrated campaign to suppress the information, to control the narrative, and ultimately, to keep the world in the dark about 3I Atlas's true nature. Why? The reasons are complex: a tangled web of national security concerns, economic anxieties, and the simple, primal fear of the unknown. Imagine the implications if the news broke to the world that we were receiving intelligent signals from an extraterrestrial source. The potential for societal upheaval is immense. Religious beliefs challenged, political structures questioned, economic systems thrown into disarray. The stock market alone could experience unprecedented volatility, with entire industries collapsing overnight. Governments feared mass panic, social unrest, and the erosion of their authority. They envisioned a world gripped by chaos, where conspiracy theories ran rampant and the very fabric of society began to unravel. It was a doomsday scenario, and they believed that the only way to prevent it was to maintain control, to manage the flow of information, and to keep the public unaware of the true extent of the 3I Atlas phenomenon. National security also played a significant role. The signals emanating from 3I Atlas contained information, data that could potentially be weaponized. What if a hostile nation were to gain access to this technology first? The implications for global power dynamics were terrifying. The race to decipher the signals became a matter of national security, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse where the future of the world hung in the balance. Beyond the immediate concerns of panic and security, there was also the long-term economic impact to consider. The discovery of extraterrestrial technology could render entire industries obsolete. The energy sector, for example, could be revolutionized by new, more efficient technologies gleaned from the 3I Atlas signals. But such a revolution would come at a cost: the collapse of the oil and gas industries, the loss of millions of jobs, and a massive economic disruption. The decision to suppress the information was not taken lightly. It was a calculated gamble, a desperate attempt to maintain order in the face of the unknown. But secrets, as they often do, have a way of coming to light. The first cracks in the wall of secrecy began to appear within the scientific community itself. Scientists, driven by their inherent curiosity and a commitment to the pursuit of knowledge, found themselves increasingly frustrated by the restrictions placed upon their research. They had dedicated their lives to unraveling the mysteries of the universe, and they were now being told to bury the most significant discovery in human history. Whispers began to circulate, hushed conversations in dimly lit hallways, encrypted emails exchanged in the dead of night. Scientists shared their data, their theories, and their growing unease with the official narrative. They knew that what they were doing was risky, that they could face severe consequences if they were caught. But they also knew that they could not stand idly by while the truth was being suppressed. One of the key figures in the leak was Dr. Emily Carter, an astrophysicist who had been working on the 3I Atlas project since its inception. Dr. Carter was a brilliant and dedicated scientist, driven by an insatiable thirst for knowledge. She had initially been willing to cooperate with the secrecy protocols, believing that they were necessary to protect the public from potential panic. But as she delved deeper into the 3I Atlas signals, she began to realize the enormity of what was being hidden. The signals were not just random noise. They were a complex and sophisticated form of communication, a message from another civilization. And the more she learned, the more she became convinced that the world had a right to know. Dr. Carter began to discreetly copy data from the project's servers, sharing it with a small group of trusted colleagues. Together, they formed a clandestine network, working in secret to analyze the signals and to disseminate their findings to the wider scientific community. The information began to spread like wildfire, carried by word of mouth, encrypted emails, and anonymous file-sharing networks. Independent researchers, amateur astronomers, and citizen scientists around the world began to piece together the puzzle, confirming the existence of the signals and the extraordinary nature of 3I. The government's attempts to contain the leak became increasingly desperate. They launched investigations, monitored communications, and threatened scientists with legal action. But the more they tried to suppress the information, the more determined the leakers became. One of the most significant leaks came in the form of a series of anonymous posts on a popular online forum. The posts, written by someone using the pseudonym Cosmic Whisperer, contained detailed information about the 3I Atlas signals, including transcripts, mathematical analyses, and even images of the object itself. The Cosmic Whisperer posts sent shockwaves through the internet. People from all walks of life, drawn by the mystery and the potential implications, began to pore over the data, analyzing the signals and debating the meaning of the message. The 3I phenomenon had officially entered the public consciousness. The government's response was swift and decisive. They launched a massive online surveillance operation, attempting to identify and silence the Cosmic Whisperer. They pressured the forum administrators to remove the posts and to cooperate with their investigation. But the internet, by its very nature, is resistant to censorship. The Cosmic Whisperer posts were copied and reposted on countless websites, ensuring that the information would remain accessible to anyone who sought it. As the leaks continued, the government's control over the narrative began to crumble. The mainstream media, initially hesitant to report on the story, began to take notice. Investigative journalists, smelling a major scoop, started to dig into the 3I Atlas phenomenon, interviewing scientists, tracking down leakers, and piecing together the truth. The pressure on the government became unbearable. They could no longer deny the existence of the signals or the extraordinary nature of 3I Atlas. They were forced to acknowledge the discovery, but they attempted to downplay its significance, portraying it as a natural phenomenon, a harmless anomaly that posed no threat to humanity. But the public was not buying it. The leaks had revealed too much, the evidence was too compelling. People demanded answers. They wanted to know the truth about 3I, and they were not going to be silenced. The 3I saga became a global phenomenon, dominating headlines, sparking debates, and inspiring awe and wonder. People from all walks of life were captivated by the mystery, drawn to the possibility of contact with another civilization. The government's attempt to suppress the information had failed. The truth was out there, and it was changing everything. But the leaks also had a dark side. As the information spread, it became distorted, misinterpreted, and weaponized. Conspiracy theories flourished, fueled by misinformation and paranoia. Some people believed that 3I was a harbinger of doom, a sign of an impending alien invasion. Others believed that the government was lying about the signals, that they were hiding something even more sinister. The leaks also put the leakers themselves at risk. Dr. Carter and her colleagues faced constant surveillance, harassment, and even threats. They knew that they were playing a dangerous game, but they believed that the truth was worth fighting for. The 3I Atlas leaks were a watershed moment in human history. They demonstrated the power of information, the importance of transparency, and the enduring human desire to know the truth, no matter the cost. The government's initial reaction was to discredit the leakers, painting them as rogue scientists, conspiracy theorists, or even traitors. They launched a smear campaign, attempting to undermine their credibility and to discourage others from coming forward. But the leakers stood their ground. They defended their actions, arguing that they had a moral obligation to share the truth with the world. They pointed to the potential benefits of understanding the 3I Cygnus signals, the possibility of learning new technologies, of gaining new insights into the universe, and of forging a connection with another civilization. The debate over the leaks raged on, dividing the scientific community, the media, and the public at large. Some people condemned the leakers, accusing them of endangering national security and undermining the government's authority. Others praised them as heroes, hailing them as champions of transparency and defenders of the public's right to know. The 3i Atlas leaks also had a profound impact on the scientific process itself. They forced scientists to confront the ethical implications of their work, to consider the potential consequences of their discoveries, and to grapple with the question of whether they had a responsibility to share their knowledge with the world, even if it meant defying the government. The leaks also highlighted the importance of independent research and citizen science. They showed that ordinary people, armed with curiosity, intelligence, and access to information, could play a vital role in unraveling the mysteries of the universe. The 3i Atlas leaks were a testament to the power of the human spirit, the enduring quest for knowledge, and the unwavering belief in the importance of truth. They were a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power, the truth will always find a way to emerge. But the question remained, what was the purpose of the 3i Atlas signals? What did the senders want? And what would happen when we finally understood their message? The answers to these questions were still shrouded in mystery, but as humanity continued to listen, to analyze, and to decode, the truth was slowly beginning to reveal itself. The cover-up surrounding 3i Atlas was a complex and multifaceted operation, driven by a variety of factors, including fear, greed, and the desire to maintain control. But ultimately, it failed. The truth, like water, always finds a way to seep through the cracks, to erode the foundations of secrecy, and to emerge into the light. The leaks were a turning point in the 3i Atlas saga, a moment when the narrative shifted from one of government control to one of public awareness. They empowered ordinary people to engage with the discovery, to ask questions, and to demand answers. And as the world began to grapple with the implications of 3i Atlas, a new question emerged. What do they want? What is the purpose of this interstellar message? Is it a warning, an invitation, or something else entirely? The answers to these questions would determine the future of humanity and the fate of our planet. The next chapter will explore the various theories and speculations surrounding the intentions of the senders of the 3i Atlas signals, delving into the complex and often terrifying possibilities that lie ahead. Chapter 7. What do they want? Analyzes the latest developments in signal interpretation, emerging theories about the purpose of 3i Atlas's mission, and the terrifying possibility that this might be just the beginning of a larger contact scenario. Explores various hypotheses about alien intentions. As the weeks turned into months, the signals from 3i Atlas became more complex, more nuanced. The initial excitement of simply detecting an alien message gave way to the daunting task of understanding its intent. What did they want? This question hung heavy in the air, debated in hushed tones in secure facilities, and whispered among the growing online community obsessed with the interstellar visitor. The initial focus remained on deciphering the core language, if you could even call it that. The mathematical patterns were undeniable, prime numbers echoing like cosmic signatures, Fibonacci sequences spiraling through the transmissions. But these weren't just random mathematical curiosities. They were structured, layered, woven into something far more intricate. One leading theory, championed by Dr. Aris Thorne at the SETI Institute, suggested that the mathematics were simply a universal language, a way to establish common ground. Think of it as a cosmic Rosetta Stone, he explained in a leaked memo. Mathematics is the one thing we can reasonably assume any intelligent civilization will understand. It's a neutral starting point. The problem was, a starting point for what? Were they simply introducing themselves? Were they offering a greeting? Or was there something more profound, something hidden within the elegant equations? Another faction, led by the enigmatic cryptographer known only as Cipher, believed the mathematical structures were a key to unlocking a deeper code, a form of encryption far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. Cipher argued that the patterns weren't the message itself, but rather a framework for concealing the true message. He pointed to subtle anomalies in the prime number distributions, minute deviations from expected sequences that, when analyzed through advanced algorithms, seemed to hint at linguistic structures. Imagine a musical score, Cipher explained in an anonymous online post. The notes themselves are just frequencies, but the arrangement, the rhythm, the harmony, that's where the meaning lies. The mathematics is the score, but the melody is what we need to find. This theory gained traction when a team at Cambridge University discovered repeating patterns within the mathematical code that correlated with known human languages. It was as if 3i was attempting to map our own linguistic structures onto its mathematical framework. But what language were they using as a basis? That was the million-dollar question. Initial analyses suggested traces of ancient Sumerian, Sanskrit, and even obscure dialects of indigenous languages. It was a bewildering mix, as if they were sampling from the entire history of human communication. Then came the breakthrough. Dr. Lena Hansen, a linguist specializing in computational linguistics, noticed a recurring pattern that seemed to align with the underlying structure of DNA. She hypothesized that 3i was attempting to communicate using the language of life itself. DNA is, in essence, a code, she argued in a controversial paper. It's a set of instructions for building and operating a biological organism. If we can understand the syntax and grammar of DNA, we can potentially unlock a new level of communication with 3i. Hansen's theory was met with skepticism, but further analysis revealed compelling evidence. The patterns she identified seemed to correlate with specific genetic sequences, suggesting that 3i was not only aware of our DNA, but was actively attempting to integrate it into its communication system. This discovery opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. Were they trying to understand our biology? Were they attempting to modify it? Or were they simply using DNA as another form of universal language? A way to bridge the gap between two fundamentally different life forms. As the decoding efforts intensified, other theories began to emerge, some more plausible than others. One popular hypothesis was that 3i was a von Neumann probe, a self-replicating robotic spacecraft designed to explore the galaxy and transmit information back to its creators. In this scenario, the signals were simply status updates, reports on the probe's progress, and requests for further instructions. This theory aligned with the growing evidence that 3i was not a natural comet. Its unusual trajectory, its resistance to solar radiation, and its internal structure all pointed to an artificial origin. If it was a probe, then its mission was likely one of exploration and data collection. But what kind of data was it collecting? And what would it do with that information? Another, more alarming theory suggested that 3i was a scout ship, a precursor to a larger invasion force. This hypothesis was fueled by the object's apparent ability to learn and adapt, its responsiveness to human transmissions, and the subtle but undeniable sense of calculation that permeated its signals. "It's like they're studying us," whispered one analyst working on the project. "They're learning our strengths and weaknesses, our technology, our culture. It's like they're preparing for something." The fear of an alien invasion, of course, was a common trope in science fiction, but the possibility couldn't be dismissed out of hand. History was filled with examples of civilizations being conquered by technologically superior forces. Could 3i be the harbinger of a similar fate for humanity? The most terrifying aspect of this scenario was the potential for deception. What if the signals were designed to lull us into a false sense of security, to make us believe that 3i was benign, when in reality it was paving the way for our destruction? This fear was amplified by the discovery of hidden messages within the signals, subtle patterns that seemed to convey warnings, pleas for help, or even threats. These messages were often cryptic and ambiguous, open to multiple interpretations, but they were enough to send shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned scientists. One message, for example, consisted of a repeating sequence of prime numbers that, when translated using a complex algorithm, seemed to spell out the word beware. Another message contained a series of images, encoded in a complex mathematical matrix that depicted scenes of planetary devastation. Were these genuine warnings? Or were they elaborate hoaxes, designed to sow discord and paranoia? No one could say for sure, but the uncertainty was enough to keep everyone on edge. As the debate raged on, a new theory emerged, one that was both unsettling and strangely compelling. This theory suggested that 3I Atlas was not an emissary of a single alien civilization, but rather a repository of knowledge, a cosmic library containing the accumulated wisdom of countless alien species. According to this hypothesis, 3I Atlas was designed to travel through the galaxy, collecting and disseminating information, acting as a kind of interstellar internet. The signals we were receiving were not messages from a specific civilization, but rather fragments of a vast, interconnected network of knowledge. This theory explained the bewildering mix of languages, the references to DNA, and the seemingly random patterns within the signals. It also offered a more benign explanation for 3I Atlas's behavior. It wasn't studying us, it was simply cataloguing us, adding our knowledge and experience to its vast database. But even this seemingly benign scenario had its dark side. What if the knowledge contained within 3I Atlas was dangerous, too advanced for humanity to handle? What if it contained information that could lead to our own destruction? The analogy of opening Pandora's box kept coming up. Were we ready to unleash the accumulated knowledge of the universe, or were we better off remaining in our state of blissful ignorance? The question of intent was further complicated by the object's apparent ability to learn and adapt. As we sent more and more signals to 3I Atlas, its responses became more sophisticated, more tailored to our understanding. It was as if it was learning our language, our culture, our way of thinking. This raised the unsettling possibility that 3I Atlas was not just transmitting information, but also receiving it. It was learning about us, about our world, about our history, and what it learned could potentially influence its future actions. The idea of an alien intelligence learning about humanity in real time was both fascinating and terrifying. What conclusions would it draw? What would it think of our wars, our inequalities, our environmental destruction? Would it see us as a threat, or as a potential ally? As the months passed, the signals from 3I Atlas continued to evolve, becoming more complex, more enigmatic, more personal. It was as if the object was trying to establish a connection with us, to forge a relationship, to communicate. But what was it trying to communicate? That was the question that haunted the dreams of scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens alike. What did they want? Friendship, knowledge, assistance, or something far more sinister? The truth was, we didn't know. And perhaps we never would. But one thing was clear. 3I Atlas had changed everything. It had shattered our assumptions about the universe, about our place in it, about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. It had forced us to confront our deepest fears and our highest hopes. It had challenged us to think about our future, about our destiny, about the kind of civilization we wanted to be. And as we continued to listen to the signals from the stars, we knew that we were on the verge of something extraordinary, something that could change the course of human history forever. We were preparing for contact. But were we ready for what that contact might bring? The world held its breath, poised on the precipice of a new era. The signals continued, each pulse a question mark hanging in the vast darkness. What did they want? And what would we do when we finally understood? As the sun rose each day, painting the sky with hues of hope and trepidation, humanity braced itself. We were about to find out if we were alone in the universe. And if we weren't, we were about to discover what it truly meant to be part of a cosmic conversation. But the secrets held within 3I Atlas were not confined to the sterile labs and government bunkers. The truth, like a virus, was spreading. The next chapter will delve into the growing public awareness, the citizen scientists, and the chaos that ensued as the world grappled with the reality of an alien presence. The cover-up was crumbling, and the information was leaking, drop by agonizing drop, into the hands of the people. Chapter 8. Preparing for Contact examines humanity's readiness for confirmed extraterrestrial contact, the potential societal impacts of the 3I Atlas revelation, ongoing monitoring efforts, and what the future might hold as we continue to receive signals from our mysterious interstellar visitor. So, here we are. Humanity, staring into the abyss, and the abyss is staring back. 3i Atlas continues its journey through our solar system, a silent messenger carrying a message we're only beginning to understand. But understanding isn't enough. Are we for what comes next? That's the question we need to answer. The truth is, we're woefully unprepared. Decades of science fiction have painted countless scenarios of alien contact, from benevolent saviors to malevolent invaders. We've entertained ourselves with the possibilities, but we've largely failed to seriously consider what contact would entail. Think about it. What's the official protocol for first contact? Is there a global strategy in place, agreed upon by all nations? The answer, quite frankly, is no. There are some guidelines proposed by organizations like the International Academy of Astronautics, but these are just that, guidelines. They're not legally binding, and they don't address the complexities of a sustained, interactive communication like we're experiencing with 3i Atlas. Our current response is fragmented, reactive. Scientific teams are working tirelessly to decipher the signals. Governments are grappling with the implications of the discovery, and the public is left to speculate, often fueled by misinformation and fear. We're a species divided, facing a challenge that demands unity. One of the biggest hurdles is simply the sheer scale of the revelation. The existence of extraterrestrial intelligence shatters our long-held assumptions about our place in the universe. It forces us to confront the possibility that we're not unique, not the pinnacle of evolution, not even necessarily the most advanced civilization in our galaxy. That's a tough pill to swallow. The societal impact could be profound. Religions, which often center on the idea of human exceptionalism, may face existential crises. Political systems, already strained by internal divisions, could fracture under the weight of this new reality. Economic structures, built on the assumption of limited resources and competition, might need to be re-evaluated in light of potential interstellar trade or technological exchange. Imagine the stock market reacting to the news that faster-than-light travel is possible, or the oil industry responding to the discovery of a clean, virtually limitless energy source. The ripple effects would be felt across every sector of society. And what about our cultural identity? How will we define ourselves as humans when we know that we're not alone? Will we cling to our differences, emphasizing our national, ethnic, and religious identities? Or will we find common ground, recognizing our shared humanity in the face of something far greater than ourselves? These are not abstract philosophical questions. They are urgent, practical concerns that we need to address now, before 3i Atlas gets any closer. We need to start a global conversation involving scientists, policymakers, theologians, artists, and everyday citizens to explore the potential consequences of contact and to develop a coordinated response. One crucial aspect of this preparation is education. We need to equip people with the critical thinking skills to evaluate information, to distinguish between credible sources and conspiracy theories, and to understand the scientific principles underlying the 3i Atlas phenomenon. We need to promote scientific literacy so that people can engage in informed discussions about the implications of the discovery. Think back to the early days of the internet. Many people were initially skeptical, even fearful, of this new technology. But as they learned more about it, as they saw its potential for communication, education, and commerce, they embraced it. We need to do the same with the 3i Atlas revelation. We need to demystify it, to make it accessible, to show people that it's not something to be feared, but something to be understood. Another critical area is international cooperation. The 3i Atlas phenomenon is not a national issue, it's a global one. It affects all of humanity, and it requires a coordinated response from all nations. We need to establish a clear chain of command, a unified decision-making process, so that we can act quickly and decisively in the event of a crisis. This is not to say that we should abandon our national interests, but we need to recognize that our shared survival depends on our ability to cooperate. We need to put aside our differences, to focus on our common goals, and to work together to ensure the future of our species. Consider the example of the global response to climate change. Despite decades of scientific evidence, despite the growing threat of rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and ecological collapse, international cooperation has been slow and uneven. We've been hampered by national interests, political divisions, and economic concerns. We can't afford to make the same mistakes with 3i Atlas. The stakes are simply too high. Beyond education and cooperation, we also need to address the potential for conflict. What if the intentions of the civilization behind 3i Atlas are not benevolent? What if they see us as a threat, or as a resource to be exploited? We need to be prepared for the worst-case scenario, even as we hope for the best. This doesn't necessarily mean building up our military defenses. It means developing strategies for de-escalation, for communication, for conflict resolution. It means understanding the potential motivations of an alien civilization and anticipating their actions. It means being prepared to defend ourselves, but also being willing to negotiate, to compromise, to find common ground. Think about the history of human conflict. So often, wars have been started by misunderstandings, by misinterpretations, by failures of communication. We can't afford to repeat those mistakes with an alien civilization. We need to be clear about our intentions, transparent about our capabilities, and willing to listen to their concerns. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 3i Atlas phenomenon is the possibility that it's adapting its signals in real time, learning about our technology, and responding to our transmissions. This raises a profound question. Are we teaching it how to interact with us? Are we inadvertently revealing our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities, our potential for conflict? We need to be careful about what we transmit into space. We need to think about the message we're sending, not just the words we're using. Are we projecting an image of strength, of intelligence, of unity? Or are we revealing our divisions, our fears, our capacity for self-destruction? Consider the Voyager Golden Records, launched into space in 1977. These records contain a collection of sounds and images designed to portray the diversity of life and culture on Earth. They include greetings in multiple languages, music from different cultures, and images of people, animals, and landscapes. While the Golden Records were a well-intentioned effort, they also reveal a lot about us. They show our technology, our art, our social structures. They could potentially be used by an alien civilization to understand our strengths and weaknesses, to exploit our vulnerabilities. With 3i Atlas, we have a chance to be more strategic, more deliberate in our communication. We can learn from the mistakes of the past, and we can craft a message that reflects our best selves, our highest aspirations, our commitment to peace and cooperation. But preparing for contact is not just about governments and scientists. It's about each and every one of us. It's about being open-minded, curious, and willing to learn. It's about challenging our assumptions, questioning our beliefs, and embracing the unknown. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and working together to create a better future for all. We need to start having conversations with our families, our friends, our colleagues, about the implications of the 3i Atlas phenomenon. We need to explore the ethical, philosophical, and spiritual dimensions of contact. We need to prepare ourselves for the possibility that our world is about to change forever. Think about the impact of the printing press, the telephone, the internet. Each of these technologies revolutionized human communication, transforming our societies in profound ways. The discovery of extraterrestrial intelligence could have an even greater impact, reshaping our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. We need to be ready for that transformation. We need to be prepared to adapt, to evolve, to embrace the new reality. We need to be willing to learn from our interstellar neighbors, to share our knowledge and experiences, and to work together to create a future where humanity and other civilizations can thrive. The ongoing monitoring efforts are crucial. Telescopes around the world are constantly tracking 3I Atlas, gathering data on its trajectory, its composition, and its signals. Scientists are analyzing this data, searching for patterns, trying to decipher the meaning of the transmissions. This is a painstaking process, requiring immense patience and dedication. But it's essential if we want to understand the nature of 3IU Atlas and the intentions of its creators. We need to continue to invest in these monitoring efforts, to support the scientists who are working on this groundbreaking research, and to share their findings with the world. The future is uncertain. We don't know what 3ILAS will do next. We don't know what its creators want. We don't even know if they're still alive. But we do know that we need to be prepared. We need to be ready for anything. We need to be ready for contact. And as we continue to monitor 3I Atlas, the signals are evolving. They're becoming more complex, more nuanced. It's as if they're trying to tell us something specific, something that goes beyond simple mathematical patterns or scientific data. It's as if they're trying to communicate but what is that idea? What are they trying to convey? And perhaps, more importantly, are we truly listening? Are we truly ready to understand? The next chapter will delve into the latest breakthroughs in signal interpretation, the emerging theories about the purpose of 3I Atlas's mission, and the terrifying possibility that this might be just the beginning of a larger contact scenario. We'll explore the various hypotheses about alien intentions, and we'll ask the question that's on everyone's mind: what do they want?